Eleanor Roosevelt.
What Eleanor Roosevelt remembered, looking back, was an unhappy little girl in a lost family in a vanished world. A child she never could have been, but was. She said, too, that her mother was always a little troubled by her lack of beauty, and that she knew it as a child senses those things. And that her pretty young aunts, her mother's sisters, told her so in so many words.
One of the aunts was to say to me, "You are the ugly duckling of the family." It was an unknown thing for a whole girl not to be a belle at every party.
Eleanor Roosevelt was born in New York City in 1884. In 1905, she married Franklin Delano Roosevelt, a distant cousin. Her husband served as President of the United States from 1933 until 1945, leading the country through the Great Depression and World War II. At the same time, Eleanor became world famous for her humanitarian work and became a role model for women in politics and public affairs. While the president's wife, Eleanor Roosevelt gave many lectures, held 350 press conferences for female reporters only, and wrote a daily newspaper column. She also wrote several books, worked with young people and the underprivileged, and fought for equal rights for minority groups. Her husband died in 1945. Later that year, she became a delegate to the United Nations General Assembly. And in 1946, Eleanor Roosevelt was elected chairman of the UN's Human Rights Commission. She helped draft the Universal Declaration of Human Rights and served in the UN until 1951. 10 years later, in 1961, she returned to the UN's General Assembly. Later that year, President John F. Kennedy appointed her head of the Commission on the Status of Women.
We stand today at the threshold of a great event, both in the life of the United Nations and in the life of mankind. This Universal Declaration of Human Rights may well become the international Magna Carta of all men everywhere. We hope its proclamation by the General Assembly will be an event comparable to the proclamation of the Declaration of the Rights of Man.
Though they led separate private lives, in public Franklin and Eleanor Roosevelt appeared happily married.
This is a very good turkey.
But over the years, they were to become more like political partners than husband and wife.
And they had very different friends, and they had very different visions. But I think what made their partnership so endurable was that they both enjoyed the game, they both were charismatic, they both liked what they did. It wasn't an ordeal for them. And in that sense, they were both happy when they were working hardest.
The work Eleanor Roosevelt was happiest doing was helping those who could not help themselves, and as First Lady she constantly used her power and influence to expose inequities and stimulate public concern. In the District of Columbia, she visited several social welfare institutions. She found them shocking and depressing and reported her findings in her My Day column. She turned the country's spotlight on the Blue Plains Home for the Aged, saying that the way the old were herded together was a national disgrace.
Born of a family with politics in their blood, Eleanor Roosevelt was a natural. But it was through the strength of her own beliefs and her unique ability to reach out to both the great and the humble that she became the best known and most admired woman of her time. After years as an activist First Lady, Mrs. Roosevelt was appointed delegate to the First United Nations Assembly in 1945. There, she was instrumental in drawing up the Universal Declaration of Human Rights. Eleanor Roosevelt, journalist, diplomat, champion of integration, humanitarian.
Eleanor Roosevelt died November 7th, 1962.